This
and
conference will now be recorded.
Okay. I think you got the clarity what is checked exceptions and what is unchecked exceptions, right?
Yeah.
So you have any doubts in that in the previous session?
No for now.
Okay. So you start even practicing some of the examples of that. So
yeah, actually not yeah. I so I worked on something like there are some stuff from a company yesterday. So
okay.
yeah, actually I was working on that on something. Yeah, like yeah, but I will review it like maybe tomorrow or sometime. Yeah, and also do some practice.
Yes. Whenever you find a time, please review that. Actually.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Give me a minute.
Yeah. By the way, Suya, like you made all the PPT like by yourself?
Yes.
It's very good. It's like I thought you download from some website.
No. Even it's a copy paste. Even it's a
good.
copy paste. So what I'm doing, but I was just searching. I have a content, right? So I will have a flow that what is the next to tell, right? So what I'm doing, I was just searching in for the images or the content. I'm just pasting it. I was even thinking that it is from the Google, but I was continuing it in a flow. That's it. So whatever
it's
I
good.
find it, if you, for example, when you talk, you get a lot of examples, right? So I was figuring out what is the best choice, and I just pasting out here. That's it.
I see. You integrate, you find a different source, and then you put them together.
Yes, that's it. Even
good.
Without Google, there is a lot of things could not be happening.
Yeah.
So in yesterday's example, we have covered with the checked exceptions and what is the unchecked exceptions. And you see that exception is the parent of all the exceptions. And I said that whenever you have try, so catch, we have discussed with try and multiple catch blocks. I've discussed this point.
Sorry.
I have discussed the point. What is a try and multiple catch blocks? These points were covered.
I think not a multiple catch. I don't remember. I'm not sure actually for the multiple catch. Maybe
okay. Okay, I say this one. I'll be repeating it. Not even I'm not sure whether I have told you.
Okay,
but so we'll just go ahead again. So you may have we before we have seen a try with catch, and we have covered with the try catch and finally, right? So similarly, you have a things like try catch, and try can be followed by multiple catch blocks. All right. So why that is a reason of multiple catch blocks is, for example, if you get some arithmetic exception, your arithmetic exception catch block will be caught, right? And apart from arithmetic exception, if you get some other exception, for example, you get some null pointer exception, or an application when you're doing, you will have a lot of exceptions. So for all that other exceptions, your other catch block will be caught actually. So for example, when you write a program, it is not the guarantee that you get only the arithmetic exception, right? So what is the meaning of arithmetic exception? If something divided by 0, that is nothing but my arithmetic exception, right? I am just writing int c equals to some 3 divided by 0. So what is this? This is nothing but your arithmetic exception, right? So in the same application, you may get some null pointer exception. So what is this null pointer exception or array index out of bound exceptions? So for example, when you are trying to call something by null. So if I say null dot something will give me a null pointer exception. So I'll take a string and I'm just giving the name of the string as null. Right? So your string will have predefined methods like length or to find the particular index. So you will have a predefined methods. So assume that I am just writing name dot length. Here, what is your length? So length is now. So what you are doing, null dot something you are doing. So what it will got? It will got your null pointer exception. So for example, if you divide by 0, again what happens? You get null pointer exception, right? And sorry, you get arithmetic exception. If you don't divide by 0, what is the next line? Next line you get a null pointer exception. So in this piece of code, there is a chance of getting a null pointer exception as well as an arithmetic exception. So I can write a try with multiple catch blocks. So I've written a catch, right? So I'll be writing a catch block again. This catch block, what I'll do, I'll write some null pointer exception. So I'll write one more catch block. So otherwise you can change this catch block itself an arithmetic exception.
So the string cannot be null. That's not allowed.
Yes, string can be null actually.
So okay.
But from null, you are trying to call. So generally for a string, you give a name, right? So some name you will be giving. So for example, in some operation, what happened? Your string, your name, that object became null. Not only string, any. So if, for example, what is the arithmetic exception? If something divided by 0 is an arithmetic exception. Similarly, you have a null pointer exception. So for example, if you say, I have some size of 4 here. So length of some Ravi, right? If I say name dot length, what it will show? It will tell me the 4, right? So in case, but when you do some operations, what happened? Your name is not Ravi, it was null, right? So what happens when it became null, right? So if you say null dot length, so what is the number it has to return? No, right? It cannot return any number, right? So in that case, it will give a null pointer exception. Null dot something you are trying to do. So which will cause your null pointer exception. In application, they have given. Java people only given this null pointer exception.
Okay, so if it's a strings null, the length is not 0. It's an exception.
Yes, length is not 0. So if you're, so when your length is 0, this is when length is 0. Here the length
yeah. That's also what I thought.
So when it is null, it is not 0. It is null pointer exception. So
okay,
I'm hard coding this, but when you do a real-time application, it will not be hard coded, right? So it will be automatically performed somewhere. So Here, there may be chance of getting a null pointer exception as an arithmetic exception. For example, if I divide something by number, so now what happens? There is no arithmetic exception. What you get? You get a null pointer exception because you are trying to divide by, you are trying to call name.len. So now, which catch block will caught? It will caught your
First one.
null pointer exception.
Yeah.
For example, if you divide by 0, which catch block will caught? Will call your arithmetic exception. You got right?
Yeah.
So when you write a piece of code, there is a chance of getting any kind of exception, maybe null pointer exception or arithmetic exception. So you can write don't divide by, so I can just say null pointer exception inside null catch block, null pointer catch block. So both the cases you are handling it, right? So this is nothing but try followed by multiple catch blocks. Try can be followed by multiple catch blocks. So first try should have one catch block, but even I can have try with multiple catch blocks. Let's say. So you got arithmetic exception because first you are dividing by 0, right? So it will never execute the remaining part and it will get your arithmetic exception, right? Your arithmetic exception got catch block inside arithmetic exception catch block, right? So for example, if you are not dividing by 0, so which catch block will get? It will get your null pointer exception. So you can see inside null pointer catch block. So why I was not printing, because I was not printing stack trace, right? So that's the reason you cannot see that exception properly. In this case, I was printing the stack trace and you can see that properly, right? So whether you get null pointer exception or an arithmetic exception, you can have a different catch blocks. So for example, instead of that, I can have one catch block that is nothing but your exception. So for example, if I have an exception catch block, that will caught neither whatever the exception is. So for example, instead of writing this, I can write a catch block, exception catch block. So what this exception catch block will do, if I got some other exception, either the null pointer exception or arithmetic exception, this will be getting caught. So you see, inside exception catch block. Right, it is going to get so if you get some other exception, this catch block will be caught. So for example, I'll be writing some array index out of bond exception. So what is this array index out of bond exception? Is nothing but, for example, you have an array and you are trying to access the array of size something like you have a size of an array of 4, but you are trying to access the size the element in the 6th index. So that will cause you an array index out of bond exception. So I'm declaring an int array. So if you see, I have declared an int array. So the size of the interarray is 5, right? So if it is 5, so what should be, what will the index? It will be from 0 to 5. And if you are trying to access the 5th index or 4th index, so you know how the array will be declared, how the array will store the elements, right? Mike?
Mm-hmm.
It will store from 0 to 4,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So here, here the size is 5, so it will store from 0 to 5. So if I want to assign the values, how I'll be assigning it? I'll be assigning a of 0 equals to a of something 0 equals to 1. So in the first index, you'll have one value, right? Can I do a of, so similarly, I'll do that. So can I now a of 5 equals to some 6 I'm trying to do.
Mm.
Or a of 6 equals to, if I'm doing this, what it will happen? A of 5 equals to 6. What should happen?
Mm.
It should throw me an exception, right? Because what is the size here? It is the size of 5. So how your elements will be stored? It will be stored in the form of, so your array will be created from 0 to 4, right? Indexes from 0 to 4. Is it clear or?
Can you, so A01, so you want to write 4, not 5, I mean, in the bracket.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, I know array like start from
Yes.
0, not 1.
Yes, yes, it starts from the 0.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
now,
know that. So
you don't need to explain that, right? So for example, I'm
I
trying
know
to,
that. Here,
so
so you want to write A4, right? Not A5, or you want to put A5.
so if I'm writing a5.6, what will happen? So whether 5th index is there here?
So now you put A5. So there should be 6, right? 6 rows. From 0,
Yes.
not yeah, totally 6, right? No?
No. So what I've declared, I have declared a size of 5, right? So how many
Yeah.
indexes? Like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So how many you will have? Elements up to 0 to 4, right? So I
Yeah.
can give the values from a of 0, a of 1, a of 2, a of 3, and a of 4. Can I give a value at 5th index? No, because the 5th index is not there. So an
Oh,
array
yeah. Yes, I know. Like because so now you give a wrong example. That's why I thought because I mean you cannot write A5.
the wrong example is right here because I was trying to
Yeah,
explain.
I see. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because I mean you can only write A4. You cannot write A5.
So here I'm explaining you array index out of bound exception. So it will
Okay.
cause a, right?
Yeah.
So that will be causing an exception because I have a size of only 4. So it's not required you to write it, right? Fine. So if I'm trying to,
Yeah. So here should throw an exception.
yes. So what is that exception? Is nothing but array index out of bound exception. You are getting this? Array index out of bound exception. So whenever you get array index out of bound exception, what this catch block will be getting caught in. Exception catch block. Why exception catch block? Because, for example, you don't get arithmetic exception. Assume that I am not trying to divide by null, right? So I am not getting a null pointer exception. So next, what I am trying to do, I am trying just giving the array of 5 size, and I'm trying to access the 5th index. So which will have only 4 indexes. So what it will throw? It will throw me an array of bound index. So this array out of bound index will have no relationship with null pointer and arithmetic exception. But your array out of bound index is the child of your exception. So now your exception catch block will caught. You got my point, right? What I'm trying to tell you.
Yes.
You got an arithmetic exception, if you got null pointer exception, null pointer will get it, because there is no relationship between arithmetic exception and this null pointer exception. And you have what is this array index out of bound exception when you are trying to access an array which is out of the bound. So your 5th index is out of the bound because you have indexes only from 4 size. So now which exception you got? You got array index out of bound exception. This exception cannot be caught by arithmetic or null pointer because there is no relationship, right? So this exception can be caught by your runtime exception, or this exception can be caught by your exception. Your parent can hold the child exceptions, right? Now I am in here. What I can do, I can write array index out of bound exception, or I can write an exception. So that is nothing but my child, right? So which will hold your array index out of bound exception. You got the clarity, right?
So you mean here the third exception is like parent exception of the other two? That's your point?
Can you come again, Mike?
I mean, you mean there is for me all the exception they are in the same level, right? But you mean there is a child parent relationship for the exceptions?
Yes. So you see, your exception is a parent of all the exceptions that I have told you, right? You have an exception, parent of your IO exceptions, runtime exceptions. For all this, so, for example, I get an arithmetic exception. Your parent can hold the child objects, right? Your parent can hold your child exceptions. If I get an arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, whatever the exception I get, your exception can hold that exception, right? So if you get an arithmetic exception, you can write only arithmetic exception catch block, or you can write exception catch block, or you can write runtime exception catch block, because these are nothing but the hierarchy, like the base, right? If you get an arithmetic exception, you cannot write null pointer exception. There is no relationship. That's what I'm telling you. You got my point, right?
Yeah.
Confusing for you.
No. Now I got your point.
So here, what you are getting an arithmetic array index out of bound exception. So whether this catch block will execute, no, because there is no relationship between the array index out of bound exception and null pointer exception. What happens? It will go to the next catch block. Yes, even it cannot caught that, right? So then who will caught that exception? Your exception will caught that exception, because this is the parent of your array index out of bound exception, right? So parent can hold the child exceptions. So here you can write exception or runtime exception or array index. You got this thing, right?
Yeah.
You can see the console. You get what exception you got. You got array index out of bound exception. Array index out of bound exception. And inside exception catch block. Which catch block executed inside exception catch block? The null pointer exception that cannot count your array index out of bound exceptions, right? Just go through this if you have confusion. Once again.
Yeah.
I've seen you. Any confusion? Just go through this and let me know.
Yeah.
Clear or? It's clear, right?
Solar system. Yeah. I'm good.
So here you can try with multiple catch blocks. Here the condition, for example, can I write this catch block before my arithmetic exception? My question is, can I write this catch block before arithmetic exception? No, I cannot. You see, there is an error. What I have done, I changed the hierarchy. Before case, I have null pointer, arithmetic, and exception. Now what I done? Null pointer, exception, arithmetic, exception. I changed the hierarchy. I am writing a parent and followed by child. So that will show me an error. This catch block cannot be reached because you can see that it is already handled by catch block for exception. So if you see, if you get arithmetic exception, which catch block will execute? This catch block. If you get null pointer, if you get some array index out of bound exception, which catch block will execute? This catch block. Is there any chance that it will come to this catch block? No, right? So that's the reason you cannot write parent followed by the child. You all should always write child followed by the parent. It will come in the top to down approach, right? So for example, if you get null pointer exception, this exception catch block will be caught. If you get some other exception, this catch block will be caught, right? So what is the point of writing arithmetic exception after this exception? Because this the parent of your exception is the parent of arithmetic exception as well as an array index out of bound exception, right? So that's the reason it is useless to write that before and writing your arithmetic exception down that. You got why there is an error after exception. If you are trying to write an arithmetic exception, you got an error. You understood why that was an error?
Yes, yes.
Right? It is useless to write that. So always
because yes, the sequence it should be like child exception label at the top, and at the bottom you can you can give you can give the parent exception, but reversely it's not working.
Yes. So you understood what is the reason why it is not working also, right?
The reason, yeah, that's a good question. The reason, let me see. If your parent put here, it goes through the parent first and go check the parent and go check parent. Check the parent. So the reason not. But I remember, but now I know that it's like the loop. Yeah.
The reason is simple, Mike. So for example, here you get null pointer. Assume that I have this piece of code. So in this piece of try catch, so what are the three possibilities of exceptions? Here I hard coded it. But what are the three possible exceptions that I can get? I can get arithmetic exception, I can get null pointer exception, I can get array index out of bound exception. So these are the three possibilities that are there here, right? So how I am handling this scenario? For example, if you get a null pointer exception, it will be in a top to down approach. Assume that if you get null pointer exception, this catch block will execute, right? If you get an arithmetic exception, so whether this catch block will can handle arithmetic exception? No. Now what happened? You'll compile, go to the next catch block. Okay, there is an arithmetic exception catch block, and it is going to this catch block is going to handle it, right? Apart from not only array index out of bound exception, apart from null pointer and arithmetic, if there is any other exception, the exceptions that are listed over here, IO, class, SQL, whatever the exception, right? So all the exceptions are the parent or the child of your exceptions, right? So all these exceptions can be caught by your exception catch block, because you see that exception is a parent. So this exception is parent of all this thing, right? So a parent can hold the child exceptions. If you get a class catch, the exception can hold. If you get arithmetic, your exception can hold. If you get array index, your exception can hold, because exception is a parent of all other exceptions, right? In this case, if you get some other exceptions like array index, so who is going to holding the, who can handle that exception? Your catch block with having an exception parameter can handle it, right? So you the parent can handle any type of exception. Assume that if I'm writing a parent followed by child. So if I'm writing a parent followed by child, what happens? If you get a null pointer exception, it will catch this, right? But if you get arithmetic exception, this catch block will not execute. This exception catch block will execute, because it is in the top to down approach. So if you get an arithmetic exception, this catch block is executing. If you get array index out of bound exception, this catch block is executing. So when this will execute, it will not execute. So this catch block will become unreachable, because your exception is caughting all your arithmetic exception also, because I have written with an exception, right? So this is catching your arithmetic exception also, and this becomes unreachable, and this catch block will never execute. So that's the reason you should not be writing parent followed by child. You should always write child followed by parent. If you see here, you can see that code, unreachable catch block for arithmetic exception. It is already handled by catch block for exception, right? Your catch block of exception was already handled arithmetic exception. So why it is required you to write arithmetic exception down? So it is useless, right? So if you write this or this part of code or don't write it, it is not it becomes useless. So that is the reason you are not.
Now I understand. Yes, I got the point.
Oh, so that reason you are not allowed to write.
That's right.
Parents,
That's right.
so always your
Yes,
flow.
yes. It's like a meaningless.
Yes, meaningless. Exactly.
Meaningless. Yeah, meaningless.
Meaningless. So this is going to catch all the exceptions. So what is required of writing arithmetic exception next to that? So this may be some interview question. Sometimes they ask this. This is a popular interview question.
Oh, really?
Yes,
You
yes.
mean like a interview
Even
for a Java developer?
yes, yes. When I go for interviews, this is a common question they use. What they do, they keep this catch block here, and they will write some piece of code, and they will say which one will execute. Three options. So for sure you'll have compile time error. This is a common question I faced in a lot of interviews. So what they do?
It's for a developer interview.
For developer interview, it's more maybe whatever you go, maybe as a. So it is a common. I have seen this in lots of times. The common question.
Okay.
You have that question.
But I think this one is not that like tricky, not that difficult.
Not difficult, but that's what. If you are not aware of the concept, it will be tricky, right? When you are aware of the concept,
yeah. Yes,
so
yes.
when you don't know that exception is a parent and you don't know these concepts, right? So then I think
if you don't, that's right. If you don't understand, you cannot answer it.
Yes. The tricky comes when you don't understand the concept. I feel even
yes.
It's not tricky in Java. Even when they design it, they will not design in such way that okay, user should feel tricky, user should feel something like that, right? So we'll have a concept, but when we are clear with the concept, the questions will not be tricky at all. It will be simple. So what happens when I was learning in the initial stages also? So I felt there was some lot of deviations. I understand the concept, some in something in a different way, but when I execute it and when I'm telling it, I understood okay, this is the way that should not be understanding it in a different way. So that happens when you execute and when you do coding by yourself itself. So listening will not be much clear from my point of view. So it's like how much you listen, whatever the tutor it may be. He may be the very good also, but you learn only on your coding. You just write the code and see that. So that is the only thing that you learn in Java, any programming language. Not only programming language or whatever you do, the practicals only makes you to learn the concepts, not theory. Right?
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So please be more do. So I'm telling all this because I just want you to do more practice.
yeah, sure. I will do. Yeah, sure. After today's session, I will. Yes, I will run. I will run the code and to see.
Yes. In this exception, you will be having a lot of things. A try with inside try, you have inside catch block. So there are some little tricky things. So once you learn all the concept, I'll tell you what is throws keyword. So when you go for exceptions and you do any hacker rank or when you visit some website and try to do some coding, so you find a lot of tricky things actually there. So for example, what happens? You see some code and you feel this could be the output, but when you execute it, it may be something different. So you will have that more examples on these exceptions. All right. So try to do that if you get some time.
Yes,
I
sure.
cannot tell you every example, right? So most of the things will be there. So we have covered the try with multiple catch blocks, and we have covered both checked and unchecked. And if you see the difference between exception and error, you can just go through the slide just for 2 minutes.
Oh, like what? One question about I just remind simple question. Like what's the difference between the IDE like Eclipse and compiler? It's compiler.
Compiler.
Yeah, compiler and Eclipse, because they are together, right? Because when we use Eclipse, it contains compiler already, right? I'm right?
when you use Eclipse, you see this option, build automatically.
Yeah.
So when you check this option, what happens? Eclipse will automatically, whatever the change that you do. For example, if I remove this, it is going to compile. It is going to
Mm,
compile my code. So it
mm,
is not required you to compile the code in Eclipse. By default, it has whatever you said. So by default, it is going to compile when you make any change. Internally, they have used. So what is the purpose that you go for ID? To make your programming very comfortable for the end user, right? So
yes, yes.
when you write the same program in Notepad, what you need to do? You need to compile the code. You need to write. I have written. So for example, you feel the good of Eclipse when you write programs in Notepad, and when you execute it, you feel that Eclipse is doing very good for you. So, for example, I have before Eclipse. So when I used to write in a Notepad. Actually, in my colleges, what we need to do, we will be writing in a program in Notepad, and we will just what we do, we'll just compile that. So whenever you write a program, when you don't have semicolon, also your Notepad will not show any error, right? And you have to write Java C and the file name. So that is nothing but you're compiling that code. So that compiler will check all the syntactical errors, and it will show you that errors. Again, you need to go to the Notepad and rectify that errors. And again, if you have any errors, again it will show. So it will ask you until it has been finished. So like compiling itself is difficult for you when you write in a Notepad, right? But in
Yeah,
Eclipse, it automatically gets compiled.
yes, I know. I know. I agree with you. But like my question, like what is exactly the difference? Like let's say now, because I know, like now it will compile automatically for you, right? In the Eclipse. But where is the compiler? Like the one is like integrated with the Eclipse, right?
Yes, exactly.
And
They have internal.
you show me a checkbox option. If I uncheck that, the compiler will be gone, right? That's the point.
So when I uncheck this, so
Yes.
build automatically is how generally when I uncheck this, what happens? The
Yeah.
compiling will not happen. So by default, actually,
Mm,
right now, what happened when you write a bulk of code, it will not happen. So as of
mm,
now, it was happening actually. Maybe the ID has internally doing it. So generally, when you do an application,
mm,
this has to be checked actually.
yeah.
So internally, it
I mean,
has.
I mean the compiler is where is it? Like where is the live? Where like it lives in like in the Windows OS? Like compare, not in the Eclipse, right? It's like it. I mean, where is it? Where does it reside? It reside on Windows, I think, right? Or like Linux.
You have a JVM, right? So that will take care of this actually. You have a Java
The
virtual.
compiler is in JVM.
No, like you have a JVM, so that will be taking care of this compiling, and even so, I'll just even check with that where that compiler exactly. I'll just check and let you know. So generally,
Sure, sure.
it is
Mm,
inbuilt in your Eclipse. So you have this in the Eclipse itself. You will be including this actually. So you
mm.
have a JRE and a
Yeah,
JDK.
yeah, I see, I see. Yeah,
So you
because
have.
I'm like, you know why I ask this question? Because I'm thinking like the relationship between compiler, Eclipse, JVM, and Windows OS, like how it like integrate with each other. That's why.
Okay, okay. So internally they have done it actually.
Mm.
So,
Yes, yes, I
so
agree with you. Like, yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right. I think, yeah, normally we don't. I mean, like, I think it doesn't matter actually. But I just like for curiosity, I want like I want to know like how
yes,
where is it? Uh,
it's very good to ask some new questions, Mike, because even I'll be
okay,
learning. I'll be checking it. So
sure,
generally,
sure.
you
Mm.
have this. So you are as a tester or a performance developer, you will be thinking in a different perspective, right? So as a
Yes,
developer,
yes.
I'll have
Mm.
a different perspective. So from my point of view, I don't worry much about internal things. So what we do,
Mm.
we write a code and how it is working only we'll be seeing it, right? So
Yes,
as
yes. Mm.
a point of performance tester or a tester, what you do, you may think that how internally things may connect it, right? I may
Mm.
not be much aware of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like everything you will, it's like everything is learning. When you go, there will a lot of deeper. Even I'll just try to check and I'll let you know actually how what
Sure,
what we
sure.
do.
Yeah, thank you.
How it's executing is nothing much. It's like a JRE. You see this JRE, right? So this there are you have this jars, right? So that are the jars which are responsible. So you download a JDK, that is your Java development kit. So that will internally have a JRE. So that is responsible of executing this program and doing all this. So I'll just check and let you know even more on that.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So meantime, you just go to this exception and errors. A small, whatever we have seen it, just give me a minute and just go through this. Mike, are you clear, right?
Yes. Yes.
So these are the points that I've discussed even earlier. So error you cannot be recovered, or you don't know. Your compiler will not have any knowledge, and your exceptions can be classified as checked and unchecked. What we have seen. So for error there is no such classifications, and so your compiler will have the knowledge of that, and in errors your compiler will not have a knowledge of that. Right. So what are the points that we discussed itself? So we will see something like we have a keyword called throws, right? So throws, we'll see throws and throw keyword, and I'll try to compare them both, right? So what is throws is nothing but whenever it is a keyword which is used to delegate the exception or delegate that exception to the caller method. So you can see the checked exceptions can be propagated with the throws. So what is the meaning of delegating an exception? Because means, so for example, where you are getting all these exceptions, you are getting this in the main method, right? So there is a chance that exception may come in some other method, and that method will delegate the exception to the caller method. So that is nothing but you are delegating that exception, or you are propagating that exception. So generally, whenever you get an exception, that method is responsible of handling that exception. For example, you have written all this in main method, right? So generally, this main method is responsible of handling this exceptions, right? Assume that if I don't get that exception in a main method, I just have a method called void m1. So now what happens? I am creating that exception exe example, and I'm calling that main method, m1 method. So what I'm doing, exe dot so M1 method. Now where you are getting an exception is in M1 method. So who is responsible of handling that exception? Your M1 method. Assume that I get a null pointer exception. I'll not handle that null pointer exception. Instead of handling that null pointer exception, what I'll do, I will just throw that null pointer exception. Give that null pointer. So here this M1 is responsible of handling that exception. Instead of that handling that exception, I will delegate or I will give that exception to the caller method. Now who is my caller method? Throws null pointer exception. So throws is the keyword which is used to throw your exception. So what I'm doing, I'm writing throws null pointer exception. So you write throws keyword followed with the method level, or you just write with the method level itself. So I'll see whether the class level or not. So throws null pointer exception. So to whom you are throwing? You are throwing it to the caller. So who is my caller? Your main method. So in the main method, what you can do? You can handle the exception or you can write throws. So here I have two choices. Here if I write a throws, it will thrown to the JVM. Throws is nothing but you are not handling the exception. You are just delegating it, right? So your delegating is not handling it. So what is the way of handling an exception is nothing but writing only try and catch is the way of handling an exception. Here, this I can able to delegate it to
what do you mean delegate?
Delegate is nothing but giving or propagating. A simple word.
Troubleshoot?
Oh, no. So here, who in which method you got an exception? In M1 method, right? So who is responsible of handling that exception? Here M1, right? In M1 method, I need to write try and catch, right? So instead of writing try and catch for null pointer exception, assume that I am not writing try and catch for null pointer exception, right? You don't write any try and catch. If you want, don't write any try and catch. Otherwise, I'll put a comment over here. So if you see, I am not writing any try and catch. I am putting a comment, which means I am not writing any try and catch. So here, what happens? There is a chance of getting an exception, right? So there is a chance of getting null pointer exception. There is a chance of getting array index out of bound exception, all the exceptions, right? So what I'm doing, I'm throwing the parent exception. So to whom I am throwing this parent exception, I am just throwing it to the my caller. Who is my caller? For main method, right? So from where you are calling this M1, that is nothing but your main method. You see, so from M1 is a caller of, so main method is a caller of your M1 method, right? So it will go M1, and in M1 you got an exception. So M1 is responsible of handling that exception. So instead of handling that exception in M1, what it is doing, it is throwing that exception. To whom it is throwing, it is means throwing is nothing but delegating it, or I can say it as propagating it. So to whom it is throwing that exception, it is throwing it to the main method. So to throw that exception, I'll be using throws keyword. Throws that exception. I'm throwing it to the main method. So now if you see here, you are getting an exception thrown from the main M1 method. So then what your main method should do? Main method neither should handle that exception which is thrown from M1 method, or it has to throw to the JVM. Anything has to be done. If you see, that is the error here. If you see there is an exception, you are throwing it from the M1 method. When M1 should responsible, but M1 say that it cannot handle it. So I don't want to handle the exception in that M1 method. So what it is doing, it is delegating it, or it is giving that exception to the caller. So who is my caller here? My main method. So in this main method, it should be responsible of handling that exception or delegating to the caller of the main method. So who is the caller of the main method is nothing but your JVM. If you see this, point out this error, you can say I can write throws. So throws, if I am writing, it is means I am giving that exception to the caller of the main method. If I write surrounded with try and catch, it is nothing but you are handling that exception. So if you see Instead of handling the exception in the M1 method, where I'm handling that, I'm handling it in my main method.
Sorry, I got a call. I
Yes,
will just be back. Yeah.
yes, yes. You have it.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Hi. Yes. Hi. So yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm back.
Okay. So throws is a keyword which is used to give the exception to the caller. A simple word. Throws is a keyword used to give the exception to the caller. Delegate, give, or propagate. Everything is same. So here I got an exception in the M1 method. So M1 should handle it. So instead of handling that in M1 method, what it is doing, it is giving the exception to the caller. So it is throwing that to the caller. So here it has been thrown into the main method, right? So in the main method is responsible of handling that exception. It means it has to write try and catch, or it has to delegate it to the caller of the method. So caller of your main method is JVM, right? So if you delegate it, it does not mean that you are handling an exception. If you get null pointer exception, it will be abnormal termination, but you can able to compile it, right? So the handling of exception is nothing but by writing only try and catch. A simple word, throw something where you are giving an exception to the caller. So generally it has to be handled in M1, but it is so M1 don't know the logic. M1 you cannot handle in M1 or some reason you don't want to handle the try catch in M1. So then what you are doing, throws exception. So it means where it will go? It will go to the caller of M1. So the caller of M1 main method. If I write throws here exception, it will go to the JVM. So in this caller, so the exception come to the main method. When exception comes to the main method, it has to do two things. It has to neither handle that exception by writing try or catch, or it has to do throws. So if you see, there is an error, right? Because it has to do anything. The exception was thrown from here. Throw by using throws keyword, it is given the exception to the main method. So whenever it has given, it has to handle it, or it has to surround with throws. So if I write throws, it will be given to the JVM, right? If I write try and catch, it will be handled here. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Right?
So okay. Yes. You write the through. So basically you either write through or you write the catch.
Try catch, or I can write throws. Throws, not
Yes.
throw.
Or throws. So throws and through are different.
Yes, yes. Throw is different
Okay,
from.
okay. Throws. Okay, yeah.
That is also popular interview question.
Mm,
So you see, throw is a keyword used to create an exception. A simple
mm,
throw. You see lot of difference, but it is simple. Throw
mm,
used to create exception. Throw is
mm,
not for throwing.
mm,
Create the exception. By using throw, I'll create an exception.
mm,
Right?
mm,
Throws is used to give, delegate, or propagate. Anything is fine.
mm,
Propagate the exception. Propagate means give it to the caller, or give it to the caller, or I
yeah.
can say, or I got a delegate. So anything that you are giving the responsibility to the caller, that is nothing but your throws, right? So if you see this slide, you may get little more clarity. So if you, for example, you have a uh, method A. So from method A, what you are doing, you are calling method B,
Mm,
right? So don't see
mm,
about throws here. So you are calling a method B. So from method B, what you are doing, you are calling method C. It will come to the method C. So from method C, what you are calling method D, right? You are calling a method D, right? So in this method D, throw new exception one. Exception one is some exception. That is a customized exception. Don't worry it. Like similarly, you can write here throw new arithmetic exception. What is this? Throw, what I said, throw is used to create the exception. So what happening in the method D, the exception was created. Now, if the exception was created in a method D, it should be handled in method D, or it should be given to the caller. Now, if I want to give that to a caller, what is the keyword I'll use? I'll be using throws exception one. I have created exception one. I'm writing throws exception one. So now what your compiler will do? Your compiler will go to the caller method, and it will see whether there is a try catch, or whether the exception was handled or not. So where it will go, your compiler will go to the caller. So who is the caller of method D? Your method C. Yes, it goes to the method C. And even it found here throws exception one. Now what happens? Even it is throwing it to the caller. So who is the caller of method C? Your caller of method C is method B. Okay, it will go here. It will see whether the compiler will see whether no, it was even not handled here. Then it will go even to the caller of method B. So who is the caller of finally the method B caller? Your method A. So in this method A, you are writing try and catch. Here you are handling here. So you can see the exception, handling exception here. So you write try and catch, that is nothing but you're handling. Writing throws is not handling. Throws is just you are delegating it to the, or you are propagating. So this is nothing but delegating or propagating to the caller. That's it. So you can see the same example over here. So you have a main method. I think this is visible, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so you have a main method. From main method you call m1. From m1 method, the same example, but it's in a programmatical way. It's a diagrammatical way. That's it. Method 2 you call, from method 2 you call main method 3. In the method 3, what happens? They are creating a null pointer exception. So method 3 should handle that null pointer exception. It means it should be uh, writing. You can see step 1, step 2, step 3. So it came here. So what happens? Your compiler will check, okay, it has to handle it, but it is not handling. So what it is doing, it will go here. So what happens? This is nothing but it will go to the method 2, right? So you are writing throws here. Before writing throws also, it will do the same action. It will go to the method 2. Method, because there is no hand, is was handled, no, it will go to the method 2. So this is nothing but your exception propagation. So your step 5, this is what your step 6, again it will go to the caller. So if it is handled, it will execute. If there is no, if you see there is no try and catch, so what happens? You get a null pointer exception. So this is your exception propagation. This or this you can take as exception propagation. The difference here is nothing but you here you have written throws here, you have not written throws here. So why the throws is required is nothing but for your checked exception you need to write throws. But whatever the case it is, your compiler will be propagating through an exceptions, propagating to the caller. Is it clear, Mike, or some confusions?
I will review it today, I think. Then yeah, then if not clear, I will ask you tomorrow. Yeah, I
Okay.
think I got to the point. I just I will review. I want to review like by my end to see like to see the flow. So just please, okay. Just please give me one moment. I save the files.
Okay. Just go through that and let me know if any issues. So
Yeah, sure. This one is 14. Hmm?
yes. Okay.
Okay.
Have you copied it, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Just like okay, that's fine. For this PPT is still under building, right? Under construction. The PPT
No.
for this one.
What happens, so everything, if I see something new, I'll just keep it in PPT. So everything is under construction.
Everything.
So
Okay. Yeah.
as of now, it is fine. So I'm telling you, if you find, when I'm trying to refer something, if I found something new, I'm trying to add it now. So as of now, it is fine. So I can share you if you want. I can share you this PPT.
Can you just it's fine. Can you just give me this slide? That slide. Yeah, this one. Just this one. Is that okay?
Okay, this slide you are asking. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know. I totally understand. It's like it's not done. I just like for me to review. Yeah. Before yesterday's session. Yeah, that's the only thing. Yeah. I
Okay.
don't need
I'll,
like. Yeah, it's only this slide.
sure.
Mm.
So almost I've done. Even I'll share that entire things also, if possible.
Okay. If possible, yeah. By email it's okay. You think? I don't know. We can share from here.
I think so. I think I'll share from email if not.
By email, you mean, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I cannot even paste these things. I think I'll send it from March.
Yeah, I don't know. Use this one. Yeah, this one is just a chart. It's
I
okay,
think
but
it will not capture the image. So
mm,
I'll just send it from the like I
email.
think I have a mail, right? So I will share total PPT or I'll send this only the particular slide. Anything.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, this one is okay. Even this slide for me is enough for now. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that. No
Okay.
issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night, Suyasu. We will connect tomorrow.
Yes. For you also, same to you. Have a nice day.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.